The storm had been brewing for hours, a tempest unlike any I had experienced on this frontier world. The winds tore at the metal siding of the research outpost, and the skies turned an angry shade of violet, streaked with lightning that fractured the horizon in jagged veins. I had been alone in my small, fortified shelter at the edge of the outpost, monitoring the sensors and ensuring the equipment remained operational. Out here, survival depended on preparation, and I had spent weeks fortifying the perimeter against both natural and artificial threats. Then I heard her. The rapid crunch of boots across frozen terrain, too precise, too controlled to be some local wildlife. Through the howling winds, I could hear a voice, though the words were lost in the roar of the storm. A silhouette appeared at the edge of the shelter's reinforced doorway, hunched against the gale. It moved with purpose, and I realized instantly that this was no ordinary being. She was an alien, a humanoid, yes, but unlike anything I had ever seen. Her skin shimmered faintly with iridescent patterns that seemed to shift with the storm's light. Her eyes were large, luminous, reflecting the violet lightning in the sky. She moved with a grace that contradicted the violent conditions around us, but there was a hesitation in her posture, a subtle flicker of uncertainty. I hesitated before speaking. "Hey,
Come in.
quickly." My voice barely carried over the storm, but she caught it. For a long moment, she froze. Her gaze met mine, and I felt the weight of her assessment. She had clearly not expected to see a human here. Not like this. Not alone. Finally, she stepped forward, but cautiously.
I
thought I would be safe," she said, her voice melodic but tinged with fear. "I did not expect you." "You're safe now," I replied, moving aside to let her enter. "Come inside. The storm's too dangerous out there." She hesitated again, as if weighing some unspoken risk, then slipped inside. The door sealed behind her, and the storm raged outside, muffled but no less ferocious. I offered her a seat and some warmth, though I had very little to offer. She moved slowly, almost ceremoniously, as if every motion required careful calculation. Her eyes never left mine, and I felt a strange tension in the air, fear mixed with curiosity. "I am not used to humans," she admitted after a moment, her tone hesitant. "Your species is unpredictable. You're not used to being caught in a storm either," I said, trying to ease the tension with humor. She blinked, a tiny ripple across her luminescent skin, almost like a sigh. I am Liara," she said finally, "scout of the Ilari Council." I nodded. "I'm Elias Kane, communications officer and, apparently, your only refuge in this storm." Her expression softened, though the edge of wariness remained. "You are human. Alone. You could be dangerous." I smiled faintly. "And yet here we are, both alive. Seems like trust is in order." The storm outside raged for hours, and we talked cautiously at first. Liara spoke of her mission, scouting potential resource zones on this fringe planet for the Ilari, an advanced civilization with strict protocols about contact with other species. She had been traveling alone when the storm caught her off guard, forcing her to seek shelter. I listened, fascinated by her descriptions of distant star systems, alien diplomacy, and the subtle politics that shaped her people. In turn, I told her about humanity, our struggles, our ingenuity, and the frontier life that had taught me to improvise in impossible conditions. With each exchange, the tension in the room eased. The initial fear gave way to curiosity, and the hesitation I had first seen in her eyes turned into something more subtle, a cautious interest. Hours passed, and the storm showed no sign of abating. The shelter's reinforced walls creaked under the wind, and the emergency power systems hummed to keep the lights on. Liara paced slightly, a ritual of focus and thought, before finally sitting near the edge of the small table. "You survive well for a human," she said after a long silence. "You are resilient. And you survive well for an Ilari," I replied. "I can't imagine traveling in this storm alone." Her gaze met mine again, and for the first time, she allowed herself a small, unguarded smile. It was fleeting, but it carried something I couldn't describe. Recognition, perhaps, of mutual understanding. The conversation turned toward survival tactics. I showed her my improvised tools, the ways I had fortified the shelter, and how I had rationed supplies to last the storm's duration. She, in turn, shared knowledge about the environment, how the storms formed, what signs to watch for, and which zones were lethal to both humans and Ilari. Then came the moment that would define the night. A distant rumble, louder than the storm itself, shook the shelter. Sensors flared. An avalanche had begun on the nearby ridge, threatening to bury part of the outpost. Liara froze, her eyes wide with alarm. "We must warn the other scouts." I grabbed the emergency communicator. "I'll alert the outpost. Stay close." She moved with uncanny speed and grace, assisting me in recalibrating the communication channels. Her presence was both reassuring and intimidating. I realized that, despite her initial hesitation, she trusted me enough to coordinate this emergency. I, a human, had earned that trust. Together, we managed to warn the other scouts and stabilize their positions. The avalanche rumbled closer, but no lives were lost. In the aftermath, Liara looked at me with an expression that was no longer hesitation. It was awe. "You are remarkable," she said simply. I shrugged, still catching my breath. "I do what I can. It's what humans do." Her gaze lingered, and for the first time, she let her guard down entirely. Perhaps humans are not as reckless as we believed. Perhaps there is strength in your unpredictability. The storm finally began to ease as dawn approached. The wind softened, and the violet skies faded into a pale blue light. Liara and I stepped outside the shelter together, surveying the damage. The outpost had endured the worst of it, thanks in part to our coordination. "I should leave now," she said softly, though there was a hint of regret in her tone. "My mission continues. But I will remember this night." I nodded. "And I will remember it too. It's not every day a scout from the Ilari Council shows up at my door." She smiled again, this time more openly. "Perhaps our paths will cross again. Perhaps humans and Ilari can learn from each other." And with that, she departed, her figure blending into the morning light, leaving me alone once more. Days later, I reflected on that night. A storm had forced two very different species together, breaking assumptions, fears, and protocols. I had learned not only about the Ilari but also about myself, the courage and ingenuity humans can show under pressure. And Liara, she had seen something in me, just as I had seen something in her. A simple act of seeking shelter had evolved into mutual respect, trust, and a bond that neither of us had anticipated. The hesitation she had first shown upon seeing me had transformed into something far greater than either of us could have imagined. One storm, one decision, one human and one alien, discovering that survival, trust, and understanding can flourish even in the harshest conditions. And I knew, without a doubt, that this encounter was only the beginning of something far larger, something that could one day bridge our two worlds.